Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We are back. It means Spurs are coming back in our lives very, very soon. I will apologise. I can see there's some kind of issue with our comment section. Look, you must know in the world of Spurs, something's always going to not be working, right? So we're on that for you. We're going to try and fix that as soon as we can. But joining me are three great returning guests to Last Word on Spurs. Look how happy they are. You can tell Spurs are coming back in their lives, can't you? You can tell. Like I say, thank you so much for joining us. If you're with us for the first time, God, where have you been? We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too. And back on the residential therapy couch, I've got Jonny H, Jonny Hamme. John, thank you so much for your time. You're smiling. That's a good start. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm just working on my new logo. I'll let you know how I go with it. I'm going to take my name out of it and I'll just come up with a symbol. I haven't worked out which one yet, but you'll be the first to know, Ricky. Yeah, I'm good. All considering, normally international break, quiet time for us Spurs fans to try and regroup and become normal again. But this is Tottenham Hotspur, of course, and so that was never going to be allowed to happen. So, fans are back in meltdown.
Absolutely. Listen, it's Spurs. What can I say? And happy belated birthday, I must say, Jonny. I know we might have been keeping it on the lowdown. Sorry if I've gone and revealed there anything, but he's still 21. No. Still 21. I can't say he's available because I might get a slap.
Still 21. And, I was in the escape room today. I never made it out, but I managed to make it back here in time for the show, which is obviously important. Yeah, it was a great birthday, and listen, best present I can have is somehow God knows how, but we beat Man City on the weekend. But
fingers crossed.
Remain positive.
I mean, they're like escape rooms in themselves at the moment. Going to see Spurs, that's an escape in itself. Also back on the show, escaping home and away at the moment is the wonderful George Achillea. George, love to see you back on Last One on Spurs. Have you enjoyed a stress-free international break so far?
Well, my skin is smooth and glowing right now, so I think I've been enjoying not going to the games. But no, man, it's great to be back on here. And yeah, I mean, we all thought it would be stress-free, but nonetheless, things popped up with Spurs that always sparked some conversations. So, and I'm sure we're going to touch through it throughout this pod. But yeah, always happy to be back and chatting with you guys.
Bless you, my man. Always a pleasure. Make up our panel. Look, residential now in the house of the Spurs Kings. Marlon's back on. Miles, how are you? I know that your wife loves me at the moment with the amount of shows I'm giving you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, mate, she probably does love you. She don't want me anywhere near her. So she's always like, yes, Last Word on Spurs. You go. Nah, all good. International break's been a bit of a different one because I decided to release a video on what fans thought on Ange. And it's quite remarkable, like, after watching it and seeing how close and knitted we are together. And majority of us are on the same page, considering all the noise you hear, it was literally mind-blowing. But yeah, if anyone ain't seen it, head over to Spurs Kings TV. It was literally, it even shocked me because I thought there was going to be more and more swaying to one way, but it wasn't. Most of us were on the same page.
Yeah. No, I'd say very, very interesting, I'd say, at the moment with regards to fan mood, I've got to say. It's an interesting couple of months ahead, that is for sure. We've got a lot to cover on Last One on Spurs, so I'm going to give you a very quick, if I can, guys, international roundup. And apologies if I put you to sleep after this international roundup. I will try and go as quickly as I can with regards to what has happened during this international break. So Dejan Kulusevski scored twice and provided an assist as he captained Sweden to an emphatic 6-0 home win over Azerbaijan on Tuesday evening. There was a slight concern of an injury scare, but for the moment, he is okay, and we'll report back to the Spurs camp later on this week, as will Lucas Bergvall, who came off the bench midway through that second half with a score at 5-0. Pat Matasar put in a solid shift to Senegal to help them register a 2-0 home win to Burundi in the Africa Cup of Nations qualifying. Rodrigo Bentancur, there's a lot of Rodrigo going to come on this show, return for Uruguay as they needed a late winner to beat Colombia 3-2 in the qualifying for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Will Lancashire, meanwhile, played 90 minutes for England's under-20 elite squad as they drew 1-1 away to Poland. Ben Davies wore the captain's armband, and Brennan Johnson played a huge role as everything went right on the night for Wales in the UEFA Nations League on the Tuesday evening. Brennan Johnson claiming an assist for the second goal and scoring a third in a 4-1 victory over Iceland, the top spot in League B. Brian Hill, yes, we're still doing some... Why am I mentioning Brian Hill on this bloody show? Brian Hill scored his maiden goal for the Spanish national team on Monday night. Cue the folk to say Brian Hill has got a chance. Crackers, he's still scoring. Destiny, a doggy helping Italy to a 1-0 win against Belgium that took place to book a quarter-final berth for the UEFA Nations League last Thursday. Dominic Solanke made his third senior international appearance for England during Sunday's 5-0 win over the Republic of Ireland. Pedro Porro helped Spain secure top spot in their UEFA Nations League group with a 2-1 away win over Denmark. That was on the Friday evening. Staying in Europe, Radu Dragic started for Romania, should I say, against Kosovo. I've got to say, sorry. I say Roma. I think his agent in this past week or so, thinking of every single club since we've been away. I can't keep up. I've never known an agent, can I just say? And look, I waffle a lot on here for how many years I've been doing this, 7-8 years. That bloke, I don't know how much waffle he's got, but my God, there's almost like a daily update on Radu Dragic at the moment. So it appears he's staying, could be going, appears he's staying. Keep with us before the end of the show. We might have sold him 3 times and have him back on loan. So keep an eye on him to come. Archie Gray started, and as well as Dane Scarlett featuring for the England under-21s in a goalless draw away to Spain in a friendly. And some of the big news to come in terms of our internationals. Heung-Min was on target for South Korea as he took a step closer to reaching the 2026 FIFA World Cup. For Sonny, he reaches over half a century, ticking over to 51 goals for his country. And also crucial as well, Son has now contributed 18 goal GAs in his last 18 games. Also, worth a mention here, Son was substituted around the hour mark. It is the earliest time he's been subbed since 2019. And remarkably, he's played around 50 games. So maybe there seems to be a message seeping through there. We have to manage Sonny's minutes. And finally, I know many were probably shocked that he did go away, Christian Romero, on... Again, I mean, it's an on injury. Would you say injury duty? He obviously wasn't. He was a doubt going into that Ipswich game, as many will remember, and he was a concern in terms of that defeat for Argentina against Paraguay. He came off at half time, did not reappear for the second half. For those that are watching the show, they can see Romero looks to be having some crimson pain there in his. Appeared, we've been told, after his right foot. He certainly was clutching at his calf during the game. He will link up with the rest of the Spurs squad at Hotspur Way later in the week, where we will await a further update from Ange Postecoglou. And like I say, Spurs and really injury records, they're not getting any real luck at the moment when it comes to the injury front. Spurs at the moment are topping injuries resulting in a player missing more than just one game. Spurs topping that. They're topping one league at the moment, 13 in terms of the Premier League for the amount of players injured at the moment. Jonny, I'll start with you on this subject. We've had a bit of a roundup there in the internationals. Concerned about the amount of injuries we're picking up at the moment?
Top of the injury league. You'll never sing that. Yeah.
Someone had to say it.
I don't know what to say. Look, we never play the game, do we? You know, Arsenal pull all their players out. He's got his big toes throbbing a little bit. We'll have to pull him out. You know, Manchester City, I think, pulled out 4 players. Grealish pulled out, Foden pulled out, Diaz pulled out. It was 2 or 3 others. I think 5 players of Manchester City pulled out. So they'll have a nice little rest coming up to the game on Saturday. But not us, you know. We have the wool pulled over our eyes. I mean, one minute we're being told that Romero's going to be out for 10 days. And I tweet, well, that's great news. He might be out for 10 days, but you know what that means? He's not going to Argentina, and he's not going to fly thousands of miles and play a couple of games and then fly all the way back knackered. But lo and behold, no, he thought, well, if I can manage to get on that pitch and last through for Ipswich, there's no way they can stop me going to Argentina. So he went there. Came off injured, flew home just in time for his wife to have the baby.
Congratulations.
Listen, I don't know what we've got going on down there, but I've said this before. I think we've employed vets. I don't think we have a medical team. I think we have a dog clinic. I don't know what we've got going on down there. Listen, it's either one of 2 things. It's either the intense training, the intensity of training. We're leaving too much on the training pitch. Or it's a combination of that and the monitoring of our players. I would say it's a combination of the 2, because even before Ange came, we had lots of injury issues at the club. And, you know, if you look at American football, I know it's a different sport, but American football is very much impact, short bursts, but high energy impact. But the amount of money, if you ever watch any of these NFL documentaries, the amount of money they spend on equipment and sports science, because they're investing tens or hundreds of millions in players. And I just feel like it feels still like a bit amateur hour at our club. Are we really investing what we should be investing? No, we're talking about a club that invests in everything that we're not interested in, like the team, which doesn't invest in that. Is it investing in state-of-the-art medical team, state-of-the-art medical equipment? I really like to get to the bottom of it, because I believe that we're not. I really do. I mean, I heard, I don't know how true it is, that Conte wanted the cryo chamber, which we didn't even have at the club. And, Levy wasn't overly happy because the cost of the cryo chamber. Now, I'm not a sports scientist, but one thing I do know is the cryo chamber helps speed up recovery from injuries. There's something in it. It can't just be this one, it's this season, last season, and the season before. There's got to be something in it.
It's interesting because, like I say, again, when you're looking at that injury record, George, coming over to you there, Spurs have had some real unlucky situations there. 13 injuries to 13 players. Some have been forced to miss a game or more this season. I will just say, just on Romero, whilst we understand there is a slight maybe concern about an injury doubt, we have to also point out the fact that he has just had a newborn baby, so must take that into consideration. And that might be a reason why, again, obviously he wasn't featuring in Argentina's latter game, obviously for their international period. But the key point here, George, this is more than anyone else with Brighton and Ipswich both on 12. You've got obviously Villa and Palace on 11, whilst Arsenal and Man City have both had 10 such injuries. And all the way down the bottom of the table lie West Ham. We've only had 2 injuries that ensure players missed 1 or more matches. And when it comes to days lost to injuries among the Premier League sides this season, Spurs have come in 6th with a combined total of 273 days so far. Do you buy the fact, George, is that the nature of us playing a real high intensity when it comes to training, or have we just been purely really unlucky?
I think the intensity of training's definitely got to be a big part of it, because you've got players like the Odebear, who supposedly has never had an injury before in his life. I know he's still only young at 19, but he's joined the club with no known medical issue history at all. Yet he's now going to be out for months on end and barely featured in our first season, his first season at Spurs. So there's got to be something in the way we train. We all know Van der Ven gets worked ridiculously hard with all his tracking back and what he has to do for the team. So I'm not really surprised that his hammies are going. But then again, that's probably down to the club not really planning the backups properly, right? Because I think a lot of us during the summer were saying one big area we really need to focus on was this sort of left centre back situation. And I feel like we didn't really cover that well. And unfortunately, Van der Ven's pulling up with a similar injury to what he had last year and is out for a while again. And it's just causing us major issues, because I don't think we can play the way we do. But I totally agree. It can't just be the style of football, because we've had it under all of our previous 3 or 4 managers since Pochettino. Yeah. So there's definitely got to be something in what the club do in terms of the sports science. But I've got no doubts that this intense football is definitely playing a big factor. If you've got players that have never been injured before starting to get injured, there's definitely maybe a bit too much work being done in some areas. And it was quite funny how in the summer a lot of people were saying how we shouldn't target any more wingers, and now we were down to the bare bones and had to use some kids already, and we're not even like a few months in. So
Manor Solomon as well. Manor Solomon last season. Richarlison, who, is just relentless. The hamstrings just keep going over and over again. There must be something that's not, so many hamstring injuries. Was it Ange who said, yes, in the first season at Celtic, I had a lot of hamstring injuries, or there was a lot of injuries?
That's right, Johnny. And he said after the first season, they tended to kind of fade. That's correct. Yep.
Correct.
That is right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder in that case then I don't know. Is this a way that he's kind of weeding out who's actually
fit enough
to be useful for the club going forward? Because let's be honest, the football's not going to change. The football's going to stay the same. And if players like Richarlison, let's be real, has really, really struggled with injuries for the last 2 years that he's sort of been with us, If he's not going to be able to play 2 games in a row because of it, then quite clearly he might not be the right fit for the club, and maybe some others will come up because of that. You never know.
Yeah.
But I think one player that is thriving seems to be Kulusevski. I know we'll probably touch him in a bit, but he doesn't seem to stop. Saar doesn't seem to stop. Solanke doesn't seem to stop. So there are definitely players that can handle it. It's just finding the right ones.
Totally agree. I think that's key, like you say there, George, is the point you make there, that there are some players that are absolutely thriving under the relentless nature of the training that they're being put through, for sure. And there's some that are breaking down, which is a concern. And, it comes back to that point that, Miles, we said at the top of the show, the system, as the boys have spoken about there, both in training and in matches, is a high energy one. And with a packed schedule we know to come, I think we've got 17 games now between the next international break, which many will be pleased to hear. It means these players will not let us down for another 17 games. Wink, wink. Fingers crossed, wink, wink. But also the addition of Europa League football as well. So, I just wonder on that point there. You look at the facts, Spurs at present, they've had Mickey van der Ven, Richarlison, Odobert, all currently out with such muscle injuries. You had Timo Werner carrying a groin issue. Romero, like you said, struggling with that foot injury. We'll get more from Ange in his presser. Mikey Moore coming from a virus. Look, there's slightly different cases there. What do you put it down to for you, Miles? Is it unlucky, or is it just the way in which the players have been asked to train?
For me, it's a bit more about the squad game. And when you look at the summer transfer window, it's very, very key, because how many players does Ange really use, right? You look at the young players of Bergvall and Archie Gray and some of the players he's bringing in. He's not bringing them on early enough. So does he trust the squad enough to be rotating as much as he does? And the problem is, we said last season, once it gets to Thursday and then Sunday, it's a killer. It's going to be a killer. And if he's not rotating the squad quick enough, these injuries will happen, because and I think I do agree that it is weeding out the weaker ones in this system. That's why Kulusevski can handle it and other players like that. But then when you see the likes of Richarlison, for talking purposes, like we said, they can't handle this. So this is where, when people say the backing and, backing the manager and getting the players he wants, it's getting the players to manage in this system where they can last playing 2 games a week possibly, and where he can rotate it and manage the minutes. Because as you said, we've got Van der Ven and Udogie. Udogie's played way too many games this season. We've all said it, but he's had no choice but to play him, because he's got Reguilon as backup in the Premier League, which he does not like, right? And then he's had Van der Ven, who's probably the backup at left back, and he's gone down. You've got Ben Davis, who can't really play at left back in this system. And then you had Jed Spence go out. So it's kind of like, if you don't plan, you're preparing to foul as a club. So it is what it is. Whether the club will now look at this again over next summer and say, look, that's 2 seasons in a row where we've suffered injuries. We need to bulk out this squad for this guy and give him the players that he needs to hack the system. So it's down to them. And that's how I see it, because we always knew that Europa League was coming, and we've probably given him a thinner squad this year than we did last year. So is what it is.
I also think, quickly, it's not really just a Spurs problem as well. I think it's a football worldwide thing, because there's way more games going on now, whether that's the added not Club World Cup, but they're adding a new one next year that I think City are participating in. They've got the amount of games in the Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, all of this sort of adding in. I think football as a whole, we're suffering a lot more injuries. I'm seeing a lot more players doing that ACL than they ever used to. I'm sure someone will have a statistic around it, but it seems to be every other week you're hearing of, and a lot of times younger players as well. You're hearing that so-and-so player season's over because of this injury, in which there's got to be probably a bit too much going on. But then again, like you said, it's got to be down to, we knew these games were coming up, and it's down to the planning, it's down to getting the squad that's good enough, or you're effectively doing what Pepper said, and it's like, right, I'm just going to have to play whoever's available, and you're effectively sacrificing some games because you just got no choice.
Marlon, do you not think he's cut off his nose to spite his face?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Sergio, listen, I hear about Sergio Reguilon, but listen, you don't play for Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Man United, right? And, even when he went to Brentford, I think he got 3 assists in a short space of time. Right? I don't believe he's so horrendous that he couldn't possibly play a minute. And we also know that talking, Jed Spence, and to not going out on loan, that he's got a big part to play in this squad, and then dropping him from the Europa squad, and then not even starting him at right back. against Coventry and put in Archie Gray. I think, you know, some of this is of his own making. And was it not out of his own lips that he said that Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall have surprised us all at the quality that they're showing in pre-season, and you know they're going to be a major part of this squad? Well, we haven't really seen it, so I think, you know, some of it is self-inflicted, and as you rightly said, Marlon, you know, rotate the squad. You know, why are you bringing Maddison on after 87? Don't bring him on after 70, or bring someone else on after 70. That's true rotating.
It's going to be interesting, like I say, because I mentioned that point. We've got 17 games between now and the next respective international break, and there's going to need to be a number of rotational things to be done so Spurs are able to cope with a packed fixture list, and of course with really important games in there. Europa League, of course, Carabao Cup, massive one in there. We're interested to see obviously how Spurs deal with that. Now, the next subject I'm going to touch upon, I think it's fair to say it's caused some fireworks across social media. Reports breaking over the weekend that there's been an alleged bust up in the camp. I can't just say on this point, I've got to say, and I find it staggering, you know, I bloody hope there is a bust up, and I hope there's bust ups on a week-to-week basis at Tottenham, because quite frankly, our performances and inconsistency simply isn't good enough, and it would worry me, can I just say, if there is not bust-ups in that squad of players that do want and feel there needs to be more. And it does worry me, the fact there, that many would think that would be the first time or the second time or the third time. I think, you know, if every reporter had to report on a bust-up in training, God, they'd be continuous. This is, if anyone's ever played Sunday League football or any form of any sport, you know, you're going to get disagreements in camp where everybody wants to win. Now, well, that's what it should be like. So I've got to say at the very top, it would worry me if there is not questions being asked when our form is so up and down, that players aren't seeking advice or seeking to get clarity on answers. Now, just to bring that into play, before I do, look, it's fair to say it has been a bit of a mixed season so far. Spurs have played 17 games in all competitions. They could be, as we know, sitting in third in regards to that table, but obviously that Ipswich result led to Spurs being in mid-table. Look, there's been highs, you would arguably say, with big wins against Villa, Man City, West Ham, United and Everton, but also lows like the displays against Ipswich, Palace in particular. Spurs have won 10 of their 17 matches so far in all competitions, drawing 1, losing 6. And the reports over the weekend, again, depending on if you want to give it credibility or not, that Ange has fallen out with at least 4 of the senior stars in the squad. It'll be interesting what Ange does say, of course, in his pre-match presser ahead of the game, but they're led to believe on this report that has been by the Football Insider that the players that Ange have fallen out with are Destiny Udogie, Guillermo Vicario, as well as Serie A stars Rodrigo Bentancur, Christian Romero, who are believed to have been among those upset by Ange Postecoglou due to his straight talking in public, and behind the scenes has had a negative reaction in the dressing room and has sown the discord at the heart of the team's wild swings in form. Miles, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to start with you first. What did you make of that report? And I'll ask you the question. Would you not be concerned if there isn't questions, bust-ups in the camp, given our nature of such inconsistent form?
It's always that worry, isn't it? You know, Ange is now, nearly getting up to the 14th, 15th months in the job. This is typical Spurs, right? This is typical Spurs. When the results are inconsistent, when the results start going the wrong way, we always hear this from different managers, and it always tends to go one way. Look, yeah, you're right. There's always going to be bust ups, but it's whether they get into the media or not, and that's always been the telling thing in the past. Like, there's always been a snitch in the camp, as they say, who's always leaking it to the media. Look, at the end of the day, Ange is a tough character. And as Jonny said earlier, with the international break, why we're not taking anyone out? Well, this is the reason why, because a lot of them, after that Ipswich game, probably wanted to get out of Spurs as quick as possible, right? They were like, they probably put their hands up first. Yeah, I'm on international break. Even if I'm not being called up, I'm going. Because at the end of the day, I've heard Ange could be quite ruthless. And, you know, after the last international break, remember, he came out and said he was seething, but he had to hold it all in because the majority of the players that played went on international break. And he's got the same problem again. So, look, yeah, I expect the problems. I expect the bust-ups. It's just when they start getting leaked to the media, is when it starts to become concerning. And hopefully it's, you know, it's just little things at the moment, because we want to move on as a club, we want to move forward. And these little rumors at the moment, it's like once we start getting into that 18th month part, and these rumors start escalating, and it's more players, it's different players, that's when it's time to worry.
No, it's fair points. Look, I mean, when you look at last season, I mean, at this time we were sitting there, Spurs were second in the Premier League going into match day 12. And look, in terms of where we are right now, we're not where we want to be mid-table. But I think my point, George, coming over to you, is that I've been more concerned about the points accumulation rather than the actual place in the table at the moment. I don't really look at, although we're showing the table right now, for me, the table will come more into play kind of after Christmas, January. I think that's when you start to gauge a bit more of a direction as to how much that table does come into play. But is it a concern, George, that we're hearing these reports? I know many are kind of poo-pooing the nature of where those reports are coming from in terms of the source, but I will reaffirm the point that I've said. I will be massively concerned if there isn't questions being asked behind the scenes of the players, them questioning each other, because as we know, for a club of Tottenham standard, the form, forget about who we're playing, the form has not been good enough, George. Is that fair for me to say that?
No, definitely the form's not been good enough. You could see on the table graphic you had just there, just win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. We can't keep it going, which is which is a shame. But then, like you say, I think agree with you that this happens in football all the time. If you're not winning the games, the manager's going to be pissed off with you. And I think I'm sure we've all played or been around football enough to know that happens. And I don't know. I try not to read into these things too much because I just find it convenient that they're all pretty much all of our ex-Serie A players or Italian players that they've kind of mentioned. So I don't know if Dragoshin's agent's just been on the blower again to the Serie A Times or something, because it's just, I find it all mad convenient, to be honest with you. But you see people like Vicario speak in interviews about how much they need to do better every week, and just kind of like his demeanor in them as well. He doesn't come across as someone to me that is all of a sudden having a big bust up with Ange, and bearing in mind he seems to be talking a lot on the pitch to the players and leading in that sense. I don't read into too much, and I agree with you. I think they need that. It's real life. Your boss is going to get mad at you at times because they're driving you to do better at work. This happens in all walks of life. So if a player can't handle that, then with all due respect, I don't think that player will then be good enough. Because all the elite teams, all the elite players, they're not going to be happy if they're getting benched. They're not going to be happy if we're losing games. So naturally, there's going to be some level of conflict from that. I don't think that necessarily means that it's just all going to capitulate afterwards. So, I think it's too early to read into anything like that at all. And who would be leaking them anyway is the thing.
I mean, Johnny's got a big smile on his face there, which worries me.
No, listen.
I worry we're going to start getting used to Johnny Abbey's face doing that on this show.
Look, the Football Insider, it's about as reliable as a Labour Party manifesto. I just think, we have to take these things sometimes with a pinch of salt, but no smoke without fire. I heard stuff towards the end of last season. I think it's more about, do the players believe in this system? And I question that they believe in the system, right? I don't believe the guy. And look, I'd love him to be successful. I like to state that now, because on social media, on YouTube, on Twitter, if you say anything about Andrew criticizing, you must be Ange out. I hope he survives, because, I want him to go. But, he hasn't reinvented the wheel. He really has not reinvented the wheel. And this system, I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable. And, sometimes, when it's not going right on that pitch, you see the players looking at each other. No one has the answer. And when you look to your manager, and your manager stood on the sideline with his hands in his pockets, offering nothing in return, I worry. I do worry. And, I think in all my years watching football, coaching kids football, I've never seen any coach or manager, and certainly not myself, have I stood there passive on the sidelines with my hands in my pockets when the shit hits the fan and doing nothing. Look, we've had a very favourable run. in the first 11 games. We haven't played Liverpool yet. We haven't played Man City yet. We haven't played Chelsea. We haven't played Bournemouth. We haven't played Forest. I mean, not easy games. This is going to be a testing time. When I look pre-season and, looked at the fixture list, and I'm thinking, you know what? This is a really good opportunity for us to start well and build some momentum. And all I was looking for was progression. As you said, Marlon, I think it's actually 16, 17 months now he's been at the club. And, you can't expect a team to understand the system in such a short space of time. So after 15, 16, 17 months, I was hoping to start to see this adoption and understanding of his tactics. And when it doesn't go right on the pitch, that they've got the answers. When it's right, it's a thing of beauty.
Yep.
It really is. It's beautiful football to watch.
Can't argue that. No, it's very true.
But
very,
when
very
it's
true.
wrong, it's so badly wrong, and I've been at Palace, I've been at all the games, right? And like when you're stood there and you feel like you might as well go, but you can't go because you're a fan, right? But what's coming. We don't have the answers. And I just want the man to step forward and do something. And I think that is the issue that may be causing disharmony amongst some of the players and, in small groups questioning. Because I don't believe that any of these players have ever been with a manager who carries on like this. He doesn't even talk to them or do training either. That's done with Montgomery, and Mason and co. So I don't know. I hope he's got the answers. And as you rightly say, they should be arguing amongst themselves, because performances like that, heads have got to roll. And James Maddison, mate, when you're not performing and you're being taken off, don't sit there with a hump on the sideline when we then go in and bang 4 goals in against West Ham. You should be up celebrating. There's an attitude there, and I would have thought that if anyone was causing any problems down at that ground, it's James the Ego Maddison, who came to this club as the big I am, and he's arrived here and he's not so big I am. And, maybe that rankles with him now he's being taken off. I could go on, but I'm not going to.
I mean, it's interesting, John, the points you make there. Look, I mean, what we are fully aware of that, in terms of the form that we've discussed, for a club of Tottenham's standard, and for where Daniel Levy expects Spurs to be, you'd like to think that he will be looking at this now thinking we need to see some real general progression in these next set of games, because the reality is that whilst, the table is very congested, and bar Liverpool, really everybody has stuttered and found it difficult for consistency. The reality is that the table gives us an opportunity to really, have a season where maybe we might not have had, in terms of the fact, I think you look at it now.
We haven't played the top 4.
Yeah, we haven't played the top 4 yet. I mean, I think that is what you've got to bring into play, the fact that we do know now, as you've said, Johnny, the case is we've got harder tasks ahead to come in these next set of fixtures, and this will really determine, I think, where we are in the next international break. We'll definitely have a feeling. I think that's the key, isn't it, George? When we talk about where Spurs are going to be in the next 17 games after the next international break, you have to feel now, between obviously now and then, we've got to see an element of consistency. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, because we need to see that we're improving game on game. But I think as well, the problem that's going to happen, like you say, we've got so many games coming up, and
will that help us? Will that help us, George, get into a rhythm? Maybe, arguably sometimes with teams when they have game after game after game, and hopefully they'll be winning the games. Fingers crossed, that could find us that rhythm. But I think my concern has been, really, if I've been honest with you, I struggle to see where Spurs will accumulate that consistency. Just the nature of our performances. I think as a team, that I think we are very good at raising ourselves for the more bigger, high-profile games. My concern is that when the going gets tough, a la Brighton for 20 minutes, Palace away, Ipswich at home, games that maybe you're expected to go and win, I don't know if there's enough characters in that side that are really getting these players together, saying, when it's going to be tough for 20 minutes, we've got to see through this storm. And that's what worries me about this side. It's got a lot of players that like to play when we're winning. And I don't just want to dig out James Maddison. There's a lot of players like that. But I think when the going gets tough, that's my concern, George. If the players are there to be able to see us through difficult moments?
Okay, well, two things in that. The first thing about like the congestion and whether we can handle it and step on the moments. So far, the games have proven that we can't, because bar after Karabag beating Man United, but we still had like, pretty much the full team available. We've lost every single game following the Europa League match on the Sunday. So quite clearly the squad isn't ready, or maybe Ange isn't handling the squad enough well, or there's a multitude of factors. But what we've seen so far is that we can't handle this fixture congestion. So what I want to see from now going forward is how we're going to do that when the games are coming up after a Rangers game, because that's going to be a massive game where we need to win.
Totally agree.
What's going to happen after Man United, because we want to get through to the Carabao Cup final, knocking them out as well as Man City. So this is going to be a very, very tough period for Spurs. And like you said, it's up to the players though to step up, because I don't think they've done it enough. I think that's what this team is really missing. I think, for me personally, I think Son, even though there are some moments where he's been up and down, I think he's one of the only players in the squad that it doesn't matter how well or poorly he's been in a certain game. He has that moment of magic, those little moments in games where he can lift the team up, get the goal back, get the fight going again. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have too many others that can do that. Obviously, Kane was another massive player that could do that. He would score a goal out of nothing. The amount of times Kane saved us in games where we've looked poor overall, but he was just that good of a player. He lifted the team up with his ability. I'm just a bit worried, like you say, like maybe it's a Madders or Romero not stepping up when things are going against them. I think we need more of those sort of characters in the squads. So on that, I think, we need those personalities to show that we can get the consistency in the next games. And I think, as mad as it may seem, I think City's a good game to do that in. They've had a rocky start to the season, and we know we have a good time at the deck he had usually. So as long as he's on fire, we've got to start getting that confidence back. And like you say, it's more these quote unquote lower teams we need to actually finally start beating, because that's where we're going to stay towards the top of the table.
Yeah, it's fair. Cut the final points on this, because we've got a bumper show in store here. We've got to get through. Miles, look, I mean, the reality is Spurs have scored 23 goals. They've got the 6th best defensive record in the league. They've conceded 13. I mean, look, I think there's no doubt about it. You could legitimately expect Spurs to be much higher than 10th with those figures in relation to that table itself. But the key thing is that also sums up Spurs' inconsistency. I think you look at our goal difference at the moment, which again, simply staggering. I think we've got the 2nd best goal difference in the league, just behind Liverpool. And yet you look at our form of win-loss. I think it kind of, again, comes back to that point that you're not quite sure what Spurs team you're going to get week in, week out. And again, you look at the point, 5 wins, 5 defeats, and 11, almost feels like Spurs of years gone by. They win, they lose. They win, they lose. And that inconsistent nature does little to inspire optimism. I mean, I ask you that point, Miles. How important is it now that we do see in this next set of fixtures here an element of real progression amongst the team? Because I think the thing at the start of the season was that we were playing well. We just weren't getting the results. If you remember, obviously, we look at the first 4 or 5 games you was here for them. It now just feels like the concern is that, as we've seen, it's now a situation where we seem to be great one week, not great the next week. And we seem to be finding it really harder, I think, to dig in those games where you've got to fight for the points, Miles.
Yeah, so look, let's go back to the injury list table. I think the next few weeks are going to be a struggle anyway. I don't think it's going to change. And if looking at that table, look at most of the teams in that top 7. Most of them are attacking teams as well, who like to be on the front foot. So it's quite interesting that they're the ones that are picking up the injuries. But George made a great point about the Europa League and the Sunday business, because we're not the only ones struggling with this Europe and then Europe and then a Premier League game at the weekend. Because Man United have struggled, right? And so have Aston Villa, who have struggled after Champions League games. So the only teams that seem to be is Chelsea with a massive squad. Arsenal have been there and thereabouts. City have obviously got a massive squad, and Liverpool have got. They're used to this. So it's quite interesting that the 3 clubs struggling are us, Villa, and Man United. So I don't think it's going to change much in the next few weeks. And for me right now, I'm looking at going, as long as he can get through against Manchester United in the Cup and treat the Europa League a bit more seriously and hopefully get a good FA Cup draw, I'm kind of going to take these results over the next few weeks. Because after last year, when we got knocked out by Fulham, I was fuming. And obviously the Manchester City game. So I'm looking at it like this now. Look, we've lost 5 games already. Ange is known for losing a lot of games. He doesn't draw many. So for us right now, we have to decide as a fan base what we're willing to accept over the next few weeks. And that's the thing, because it's not going to change. It's not going to change. Like Jonny said, right? It's not sustainable, right? Us going 1-0 down at home all the time was always going to catch up with us. You know, we can't keep going 1-0 down at home.
13 out of the last 15 home games. You know, it's not. Yeah.
If this was Conte, everyone would be going, no, it's not sustainable. You can't play this way. It's the same works. The same.
If you remember,
works with Ange.
We kept saying we're conserving energy. We just kept saying we're conserving energy.
The World Cup's on and this, that, and the other. The same's going to happen. Unfortunately, right, and a lot of people who's watching this will understand this. The Premier League is a very tough league, and it's an unforgiving league, no matter who you are, right? Because let's take Southampton, who play this whole attacking football, right? It's not sustainable because they're not good enough. And Spurs are kind of in that middle because we don't have a good enough squad or good enough players. Going back to the injury crisis and the players being used, we haven't got a good enough team to be playing this sort of football week in, week out without causing the issues it's going to cause later on down the line. And this is the problem we're going to have going forward. So for us right now, look, for me, City, I'd love to beat City at the weekend, but that Fulham game is probably more important to us right now because there's no way we can lose that.
I say, just to put it in perspective, it's 11 games in the next 38 days for Ange Postecoglou's Spurs, which again, I'll make that point. I think, although it's the busiest time of the year, it will be very telling as to where Spurs are after those 11 games in 38 days and will give us a real shape of where Spurs are under Ange Postecoglou for sure. Next, look, I said it's a bum edition of Last One on Spurs. So much to cover here that we've got to turn our attention to the situation around Rodrigo Bentancur. I'll tell you what, it's built up, I've got to say, over these last few weeks. Now, just to bring everybody up to speed on where we are with Rodrigo Bentancur, Tottenham have appealed against the FA's decision to ban Rodrigo Bentancur for 7 matches over a racist remark he made about teammate Heung-Min Son. As exclusively revealed by Telegraph Sport on Wednesday, Spurs appealed against the length of Bentancur's ban rather than the guilt, which the club have described as severe. Now, Bentancur has been an integral part of Ange Postecoglou's midfield this season, missing just 1 Premier League match through concussion, but will now be without the Uruguayan until at least Christmas, following the news of that 7-match suspension. Now, Spurs have explained the reason why they are appealing against that 7-match ban handed out to Bentancur, which by an independent regulatory committee gave him a $100,000 fine on top of that, and was asked to attend mandatory face-to-face education programming as part of the actual fine and the sanction itself. And Spurs' statement read, "We can now confirm the club has appealed against the length of Rodrigo Bentancur's FA suspension issued earlier this week. While we accept the guilt fine against Rodrigo by the Independent Regulatory Commission, we believe the subsequent sanction is severe. Rodrigo will remain suspended from domestic competitions while the appeal is heard, and the club will be making no further comment during this time." Now, if that ban is upheld, it does mean Rodrigo Bentancur will miss 6 Premier League games and the Carabao Cup quarter-final with Manchester United. For those listeners on audio, it means he will miss the games, respectively, against Man City, of course, this coming Saturday, Fulham at home on December the 1st, Bournemouth away on December the 5th, Chelsea at home on December the 12th, Southampton away December the 15th. Of course, that Manchester United Carabao Cup quarter-final on December the 19th. And finally, Liverpool on the 22nd of December. It means that Bentancur, I believe, will be back for Spurs' Boxing Day fixture. Again, like I say, that will be subject to this appeal ongoing. We'll get some thoughts if we can from the guys on this because, again, we've got a busy show here, so we'll try and cover it up as quickly as we can. Jonny, you're shaking your head.
Well, listen, I'm actually fuming, right? Look, is he guilty? Yeah, of course he is. 100% he's guilty. Does he deserve to be punished? 100%, right? The problem I have is that he's been done on a technicality. Enzo Fernandez, right, did actually worse, in my opinion. He was singing a song, a disgusting, detrimental song to a race, and he can't be punished because he's on international duty with Argentina. But Bentancur was in Uruguay, and because he wasn't on international duty, he was there just on the international break because he's serving a ban with there as well, he can be prosecuted. Well, I'm sorry, a racial indiscretion, right, is a racial indiscretion, full stop. They didn't have any problem, FIFA, UEFA, making sure that Fabio Paratici was banned from the Premier League when it was something committed in Italy, right? There should be no problem. If Enzo Fernandez had received a ban on the equivalent of what he's doing, then we'd have to accept it. But he's not. He's been made an example of. There was a guy who just bit someone. I can't remember his name. I think it was in League One. He got a 7-game ban. Are we saying a 7-game ban for biting someone, like a vicious bite, is the same as that? Should he be banned? Yes, he needs to learn his lesson. But he's apologized straight away. We have to understand that in South America, what is tolerable is intolerable in this country. But he's been made aware of it. He's apologized to Sonny. And, I asked the question, is it because the amount of money that's coming into the game from Asia through broadcasting and stuff has had an influence on this? I just think that a 2-3 game ban, like a red card ban, is suffice. Like for a violent contact or whatever, a 3-game ban is enough. But why is it that he's been done on his technicality? I just don't get it. I really don't. And it wasn't just Enzo Fernandez on his own. There was a busload of them singing it. Yeah.
I'll be honest. I mean, from my perspective, it's a tricky one. I think I am personally, I will just say, I think I'm uncomfortable about Spurs appealing the ban. The reason why I just say that for me personally is because you got Heung-Min Son as the captain of the football club. And whilst there's an admittance that from his perspective, he said it and it wasn't the way in which he constructed it to be said, I just don't know if it looks great from a Tottenham perspective, appealing a ban of that nature. And I understand, look, I think Premier League clubs were shocked by the severity of it. I mean, George, I'll be honest with you, I think it's one of those where really this will really cast a difference of opinions among whoever you speak to really in the game. What's your take on it for you?
To be honest with you, I've got no complaints with anything about it. He was right to get banned. I think we've got to face the consequences for these sort of things. And supposedly the rule is that it's a minimum 6-game ban, regardless, like irrespective of the quote unquote level of racism. So realistic, I don't understand the appeal because you're only going to lose maybe 1 game, gain 1 game back. And like you said, it kind of just sends a bad message that like we're willing to appeal it regardless. So I don't quite understand the appeal myself.
Yeah.
Whether we think it should be deserving of a 7-game ban, I think it's a whole different conversation, because at the end of the day, the level of racism is such a like subjective thing, and it's just like how do you quantify?
Totally agree.
This level of racism equals this level of games, whatever. So look, it's in the rules. They said minimum 6 games. They've said it at 7.
Yeah,
I'd see no complaints in it. He's got to face the consequences. And yeah, I think that it does seem a lot harsher compared to other situations. Like, what was it? The Evra Suarez situation was 7 games as well. I think that was, or 8 games. And that was arguably worse. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of racism towards Asians have been normalized throughout history. So I think it's unfortunate it's happened to us.
Yeah,
but I think the FA and the Premier League and so on need to show that they are taking these matters seriously, and I think they've done that. So I've got no complaints.
I think that really important.
Ricky, so I was just going to say, Ricky, sorry, that I'm not saying he's not guilty, and nor are the club. They've admitted
the guilt. They're
not questioning guilt here. This is not, no one on this panel and no one saying he's not guilty. We're saying, the level of punishment for what has been said, the immediate apology, both to him and the letter of apology to Sonny and the club, and what he's done since then, should be mitigating in some of the circumstances that they think about the punishment. And that's all I'm saying. I don't think that you've got any leg to stand on with his guilt, because he's guilty. And he shouldn't be saying it. It's as simple as that.
Yep. I think also just on this point, just to be very, very clear as well, as George has brought up there, Miles, coming over to you, is that it is the length of the ban that Tottenham will appeal, although the minimum threshold being 6 games, it is unlikely that they could get more than the 1 match taken off. Of course, if Spurs are to be successful in that appeal, it would then mean Bentancur will be able to face Liverpool on December the 22nd at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Now, Ben Davies was actually asked a question on the ban itself and the way Spurs have dealt with that. And he said, look, I felt like it's been handled in-house and it's now been handled outside as well. I think as a group, as a team at Tottenham, we've all put a line under it and moved on. But I think ultimately it's really important that we realise these kind of things need to be looked at with the real serious nature of them. As far as I'm concerned and the team's concerned, there's a line under it now and we've moved on. Just your point on this, Miles, if I can. As I've made my case, look, I am very uncomfortable about the fact of Spurs appealing it. I just feel like we've had enough PR disasters at the club. And I just don't think this is necessary. I think, again, as George has touched upon there, we're appealing it really with the mindset that we're going to get 1 less game. I mean, I don't really understand it. And I will just say one thing. I know we get a lot of viewers and listeners that in Korea that I think for those, section of the fans, can I just say, this is not a new thing to them. They've suffered a lot of racial abuse over the last couple of years. And I think, look, it's a case where there needs to be an addressing of it. And I think the only way you do that is by these kind of bans to really stamp down. And unfortunately, you might argue Spurs are guilty of that. Bentancur's guilty of it. But I suppose the way the FA, the way in which the officials will look at this is that the fact that unless they try and put in severe punishments, is that the only way they're going to stop people from doing this kind of nature. I mean, Miles, what's your take on it before we look to move on?
Look, I look at it like this. Look, Bentancur doesn't look. I don't care about what the Argentinians did because UEFA and FIFA are a joke. They always have been. When it comes to racing, they are a joke. So everyone, for me, I'm nothing against Joy, but everyone using that as an example, it shouldn't really be the example. It doesn't matter what Bentancur's done. He said what he said on TV, right? Yep. And I'm going to sit there and say this. Son was hurt, right? No matter what. That's why, if you notice, nothing's really come out from his camp. But if you just read into what Ben Davies is saying, Son was hurt, and yes, he's accepted the apology, but this is a guy that's probably had to deal with it in games and whatnot. And it doesn't matter what culture you're from. You need to understand if you're going to come out and say something on TV, it's not right in any shape or form. Tottenham dealing with it. Did they deal with it properly internally? Well, when you look at, they didn't ban him for any games or anything like that, like they did with the whole Basuma bit. So have they again? Are they taking racism that seriously, the club? So for me, look, as a club, we just need to accept this 7-game ban and move on. It doesn't really matter what everyone else's opinions on it. For me, it's down to he's done something wrong. He's got his 7-game ban. Tottenham just need to deal with it and move on, for me.
Miles, thank you so much. We'll leave it there on that subject. And like I say, we will keep you updated on any news with Rodrigo Bentancur. From one subject to another, and this one will probably definitely cast some feeling as to, difference of opinions, that's for sure. I do wonder, can I say before I bring this topic up, I do wonder whether Spurs do have these things in the diary that they just drop, or whether they think this is a good sign. We've just lost at home to Ipswich. I know what we'll do. Let's just piss the fan base off and remaster their brand identity at the same time. So I'll just give the outline of what's happened over the course of the last week. I mean, God, we've only been gone for a few days at this football club. It feels like we've been gone for ages and all this news comes flying through. And I will just say, I know it's the big match preview for Man City. We're going to get there eventually. I promise you we will. So Spurs have remastered their brand identity by making changes to their club logo and signature font. Now, we understand over 300 people, including players, help redevelop the club's most recognisable features to be more playful and daring. You heard that right. Let me repeat that again for you. Playful and daring. Now, in a statement, the club said, "Welcome to our remastered brand identity, embracing our rich history and unmistakable heritage, created with the input of over 300 players, staff, to fully understand what Tottenham Hotspur means to them. Our new identity enables a more playful, daring approach for the club's brand across a multitude of platforms on which it now features, with a particular focus on clarity in digital environments. The world-famous cockerel stands prouder than ever and is supported by a silhouette version, along with the reintroduction of the THFC monogram and new colours, patterns and hallmarks linked to the club's heritage. And also the club detailed adjustments to be made with the iconic cockerel badge, as those that are watching this show can see the nature of what Spurs have done this week. I mean, look, in essence, just to be very, very clear, Tottenham Hotspur has been removed from the logo, and we are now left with simply our cockerel standing proud. God, where do we go? Can I just say, this is the big match preview for Man City. I mean, this is going to cause a lot of questions. We'll go let's go to George first. Georgie, it's never easy on these shows, are they? I never give you easy topics. I mean, don't blame me, blame the club. What timing? A lot of talk about nothing, George, or is it more of a concern that we, again, as a football club, it feels, just for me personally, seem to just be kind of a little bit more of identity seems to be going here. That's the feeling I've got. What's your feeling?
Yeah, that's fair. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I saw them put the tweet out. I saw them do all the videos and whatever. I genuinely looked at it and just went, "Oh, cool," and then just got on with my day. Like I wasn't that bothered, because if I'm being completely honest with you, we have never used the Tottenham Hotspur underneath the logo for anything. It's not on our kits. It's not on the side of the stadium. I haven't seen it on any branding anywhere anyway for the last 20 years. So for me, that essence of it has changed nothing. But I do understand people's frustrations completely, because for me, it's more about the timing, right? Like, why did they wait until after a loss to Ipswich, top and Toby games, to start doing this brand identity stuff? Because you just know you're just going to end up getting comments and things like that from it. It was blatantly obvious that was going to happen throughout. But for me personally, I just didn't see an issue with it. Every football club in the world's doing it. Ajax have changed their badge. Loads of clubs are go through like redesigns. It's just a way of life. And I think as well, they at least they've gone to some effort, shall we say, to pay homage to Spurs' history of all the alternate logos and things that we're doing. I think I kind of made it peace a few years ago that they're gearing towards an NFL team at Spurs. So I can only imagine that's part of their reasoning for wanting to do all this as well, to kind of create a more brand of Spurs. But yeah, man, I genuinely did not have the outrage everyone else did, because I just kind of it brushed past it. I'm more focused on what the football team's doing and what's going on there, and I don't think this has any impact whatsoever. For me, it's going to happen at some point. They can't just wait for us to start winning everything and then like, oh, let's do a brand thing now. Like it just doesn't faze me.
Right, so what I will just say is that is George in the blue corner. In the white corner, Jonny Hamme. Come on down. John, I feel like you're about ready to unleash you.
Well, if you know your history, it's
enough to make your heart go, whoa.
Listen, honestly, George, with the greatest respect, and I respect you, but for me, from my history, growing up as a Spurs fan, as a young kid going down to the ground, it was all about the history. You know, you went down to the ground. All the oldies would tell you about the history. There were signs and there was things there from our past. Since the new stadium's come, it feels like our stadium has been cleansed along with our history. There's no Bill Nicholson statue with the gates. There's no.
I will say very, very quickly on that. I agree with that sort of stuff, though. I do think there needs to be room for things like with statues or everywhere, because it's the football club at the end of the day.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, so when you hear the passion, George, from some alternates on this is very much what it's about. It's about when you take your kids, Ricky, when you take your kids down to the stadium and they see a statue of Jimmy Greaves or Bill Nick, Dad, who's that? And you tell them who it is, because that's part of our history. Of course. The museum's never turned up, right? We were promised a museum. There's no museum. Are you telling us we got no history? Of course we got history. We got a rich history. Where's the first black man, Tully? Who's there? He could be another statue there. There's lots of parts of our history that could be identified and placed there. And whilst this seems trivial, it can seem a little bit trivial, being upset about it, but for many fans, it just seems another step along the way for removing Tottenham Hotspur from the name, the placing of the NFL and F1 outside the stadium is just another step to become it's a sports arena. And I just think, why can't you be first and foremost the football stadium with these amazing events? I'm not against any of these events. I think it's fantastic. But we're a football stadium first and foremost. And, to try and con us out with, what was it now? Paxton Purple. I mean, they say they've spoken to 300. They've spoken to 300 fans and supporters. Oh, yeah. And they all thought this was amazing. How incredible. George, all right. I mean, I'm looking at this. We've changed it into a silhouette. You're not even bothered and you're a Spurs fan. I can't understand how anyone would get excited. The THFC was removed ages ago. I mean, God knows how much they paid the people. We could have probably signed someone with the amount they spent on this rebrand. But we got Paxton Purple. We got Hot Terracotta. It's getting me so excited. We got Elm Green. Amazing. But we got the Seven Sisters trees. And we got the Bruce Castle. So there's a token throw
cloud
to it all. There's a token
cloud.
Throw to it all. I just think, had we had these other parts of our club history at the stadium, this would have been a lot more trivial than it is now, coupled with everything else.
Do you know what it is for me, though? Is for me, because the reason why I'm not so bothered about it right now is because the way I sort of think about all these sort of things is more about the reaction to it afterwards. So it's like, will this actually lead to more money to then invest in the football team? Which obviously I know there's a massive question marks about that as well. Of course, there's question marks. But for me, it's like, I can't get mad about something until I've seen what the actual repercussions are from it, realistically. Because then there's the age-old argument of like, oh, the stadium hasn't brought us to be winners. Okay, well, we have well overspent many other clubs in the last few years. The question is, did we spend that money right? And that's a totally other different thing. But we have spent money on the football team. That's definitely happened in the last couple of years. So for me, like, I can't be that bothered until I know whether this truly is going to have an impact on us or not.
Poor old Brandon, Marlon, he's got to rebrand his chair. I mean,
that's gone.
Good spot.
Good spot. Has to find some blue Tipex now.
I tell you what, I will just say, Miles, Jason will still take the chair. Don't worry. I'm sure he'll be in contact. He loves that chair, Jason.
It's part of history now.
I'll tell you what, it's who we are, mate. I tell you, it's who we are, mate. Just on, I think what I will just say is that, Jonny makes a really fair point there in terms of the stadium and where we're going. I've very much similar to Jonny's point. I've got no issue when it comes to the stadium in terms of what it facilitates with regards to boxing, with regards to concerts, in regards to NFL, Formula One, all that jazz. As long as I see, for me, the same level of investment being put back into the club on the caliber of players that we need. And I think the one thing that grates me personally, and I think grates a lot of Spurs fans, I can't speak for everybody, of course I can't, but I think, when you've got Ange, bless him, in the summer telling us we want to try and go for the title, and here we are in mid-November, and Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, bless their hearts, are yet to even start a Premier League game. Subject that might be to change this weekend. I think no one can kid us that, we aren't there yet. And it doesn't mean we're never going to get there. It doesn't mean those players are never going to get there. I think when it comes back down to the point you made there, George, is you're going to hold your reservation on what they're doing until you see if it goes back into the club. I mean, the worrying thing for me is at the moment, it feels, I've said on many shows now, and I'll make this point clear, the club are absolutely crying out for a form of investment. They've made that very, very public in the last few months. Daniel Levy has said that at the recent fans forum. And I think where we are right now as a football club is that I don't see much going to change financially until Spurs have that somebody or some bodies that are going to come in and ultimately look to put that money in. So I just feel at the moment we're kind of in a situation where, and just to be, again, very neutral and honest here, I think we're existing, but I don't see us actually doing anything in terms of progressing, which is my biggest worry at the moment. I mean, Miles, is it a storm in a teacup, or is it more concerning as Jonny appears to be worried about it?
No, so look, I understood why they removed removed Tottenham Hotspur. I just thought the timing of it was terrible, and this is where I do agree with Jonny and Ricky. But if you look at it, let's take the Nike tick for talking purposes. We all know it's the Nike tick without it actually saying Nike anymore. And that's what Tottenham is probably going down the same route. They just want the couple to be synonymous. You don't need to know it's Tottenham Hotspur. You don't need Tottenham Hotspur underneath it and things like that. But the problem is right now is that there's so many other issues that we have with the board, the club, and everything like that. It was just kind of this, everything was just the wrong timing. And with our market, look, with Spurs, we're not the best at marketing or anything like that. It always seems to come out at the wrong time. And I think they should have probably done this in the summer or the end of the season, done the rebrand, not halfway during the season when it kind of means nothing to nobody. And if there is stuff going wrong on the pitch,
not after bloody Ipswich, not after
yeah,
Ipswich.
it was just because they would have been planning that for weeks. And I reckon in their head they thought, we'll beat Ipswich, everything will be fine. Problem is that sometimes things don't happen to go the same,
not in the world of Spurs anyway. Definitely not in the world of Spurs.
So unfortunately for them, they're gonna get flack for it and they're gonna have to take it. But I don't know if anybody saw, they released all those videos and spelled Bentancur's name wrong. So this is Tottenham Hotspur for you. Yeah, this is Tottenham Hotspur. How many eyes went through that video and not one of them saw Bentancur's name wrong? Put it on X for 5 minutes. Everyone seen it. So it's kind of, what are they doing? Are they actually doing anything when they're doing this stuff and like the PR nonsense? No. And you're just like, yeah, come on, Spurs, stop throwing us stuff at you. Try and do something to get the fans on your side. So it is what it is. Yeah, as we said, my chair's been made done. So anyone listening on Spotify, I've got just so you can say I've got a Tottenham Hotspur logo chair and it's got Tottenham Hotspur underneath it. So
hey, listen, it's vintage now. It's vintage. It's worth
vintage.
More. Hold on to it. Hold on to
a bit of money.
Suddenly that's gone up in price. Suddenly Jason's not interested anymore now. What I will just say on this point is, like I say, Spurs have, to end their statement, said this is a club of first. Tottenham have taken the unprecedented step in 2006 to modernise its identity by simplifying the badge around its world-famous cockerel that has since stood alone in the minimalistic, iconic fashion in which other clubs are now doing. And again, they make that point, removing the Tottenham Hotspur text from beneath the cockerel. This enables us to increase its scale across different environments and stand proud true as an icon for the club. Ange Postecoglou, in his statement, used the word brand. I mean, look, I'm not one that says Ange says this, Ange says that. I just can't imagine Anne saying the brand. I mean, there's a man of many words.
There's no mate anywhere in that, so it couldn't have been.
No mate, can't have been true. But I think, look, it's one that has divided fans over social media, like a lot that does over Spurs. So, again, it's an international break. Tumbleweed rolls past, but not in the world of Spurs. There's always something going on. Right, we're going to move ahead, guys. We're very conscious of time. I did tell these guys, hour and 15 we'll be out of here. We're closing on that. We are going to go for our final break for our listeners and audio. Taking into that break, you're going to hear from City Ramble. I'm going to give you a preview of Man City to come, of course, for Spurs at the weekend. This has got to be the shortest we've ever done a big match preview on such a big game. Please forgive us. Like I say, it's just the nature of the fact that there's been news incoming over the course of the last 4 or 5 days that we've got to touch upon. So we will just squeeze in a big preview for Man City now if we can, because at the moment, look, for Tottenham, it's an opportunity to carry on. Their decent record at, many will call it the deck he had. I know they do. But, we're playing Man City that have lost the last 4 games. And let's just hope a doctor isn't in town, because we know Spurs do love providing a doctor when teams are really in the midst of indifferent form. And again, that comes really with Man City being buoyed by the news that Pep Guardiola is going to put pen to paper on an extension. I can hear some light relief, I think, from the corridors of Tottenham, bearing in mind who's up there rivaling them for the league. Let's be honest about it. I think there is a slight relief that Pep is going to stay for a bit longer. I just wonder, maybe this would have been seen differently as a free hit, but given Spurs' win-loss form, I just wonder, if I start with you on this, George, how big a game is this for Tottenham? Do you describe it as a free hit, or do you look at Spurs' form at Man City over the last few years and think, we can win this game?
You know what? I can't help but to actually look forward to this sort of match. And maybe it's because we've had some good ones recently, and I've been going to a few. I'm going on Saturday, so it's going to be interesting nonetheless. But I think it's been long enough now of us doing well against City that I feel like we should at least go in with some sort of optimism. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to win this game. I mean, coming away with a draw last year with Ben Davies and Emerson Royale as our centre-backs was phenomenal enough as it was. So I just think for me, it's a game and a team where clearly, historically, we do well against. So I know there's a lot of negative things going around now, but I think we've definitely got to look at some of the positive sides of this. And it's the fact that their style of play plays into the way we want to as well, and we've got some good players that can hit on the break. I know we've got some injuries here and there, but I'm looking forward to this matchup, and I think there's definitely some positives we can look forward to at least.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, on these points, I've got to say, City are coming into the game with, I don't mean to say, Rick, shut up, don't say this, Rick, please don't say this, Rick. Obviously, City are coming in with a number of injury concerns going into this game, and I just wonder, like I say, whether this is a great opportunity to play Man City. On this point, I will just say, I'm just in the process of bringing up the nature of the amount of players that they've got withdrawals on the moment, but I think, whilst I bring those players into play in a second, Miles, do you see this as a real opportunity to go to Man City and get a result to change fan mood? Or do you think City are going to be, as they always seem to be, coming into late November, beginning of December, in that kind of business mode, ready to go back out now under Pep, signing a new deal and be ready for the changes ahead? How do you see this game playing out for you, Miles?
Look, I look at the last 4 games that Manchester City had, and I'm gutted because I'd rather them come into this game on form than not, because we usually play better against them when they're on form. And they've lost the last 4, but they've all been away from home. The last time they won was against Southampton at the Etihad. So, and they didn't really play well in that game either, but they still got it over the line. Look, for us, the win-loss on our away form this year, yes, I look at it and go, look, Spurs can always pick up a result against Manchester City. We just seem to be their Achilles heel from years now. But it does concern me. They're going to be buoyed that Pep's going to sign a new deal. They're 4 games on they haven't won for 4 games. Look, as everyone says, I don't want to say it, but the DR man is in the building. And if Manchester City are probably looking at it, this is probably not the game we really wanted to getting Spurs. But at the same time, I don't know. I really can't. I can't see it. I really can't see us getting anything from up there. I don't think it'll even be a draw. I want to win. I think we can win. But it all depends on certain players that got to turn up. Basuma's got to have a game of his life. Decky's obviously got to pull off the performances that he does against Manchester City. We've got to expect more from Brennan Johnson. Certain players have now got to step up. Dragusin as well. He's going to be playing some sort of football in there as well. So, and what's been concerning for me right now is that Brennan Johnson-Porro partnership, because as you showed all them clips earlier, where our goals being conceded from, it's not from the high line. No. It's actually from the ball coming across. And Manchester City tried to exploit that in the cup game, and they did get the one. And I think a lot of teams have noticed that's where we're conceding. So, look, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say I am feeling as confident as everyone else. I know we've got a good record against Manchester City, but it's that 4 games for me that's the biggest concern. I don't see Manchester City making it 5. But Spurs can surprise me. It won't surprise me if we beat City and then got beat by Fulham. It's just what Spurs are doing this season. So, look, I'll be there cheering on the lads as much as I can. But my head is just telling me it ain't going to happen this time, unfortunately.
Do you know what? We can to be fair, and there's fair points with what City are going through as well. But I think we've also got to look at ourselves a little bit. I think we tend to come back from international breaks with a little bit more fire. Like we say, the consistency has not been there to do it week on, week out, but we tend to come back with a bit of fight. Decky's been in amazing form, and he does well against City regardless. Son's obviously back playing, back scoring for South Korea now, so he's finding the form. Solanke hasn't stopped all season for us. There's I think for me personally, there's definitely positives we can go into it. We definitely have to look at ourselves and realize that for a team that's known for being so attacking, we've got some of the best counter-attacking stats in the league right now. And the fact that City play so high up, that can play into our hands and play into someone like Johnson's hand as well. I think the games where he's poor are the games where we're playing against low block teams where he doesn't take on his man. He doesn't create something from nothing. What he's very good at, and we saw it with his last, I don't know if it was quite last minute, but his goal for Wales the other day, it was a long ball forward to him. He ran onto it into space, hit a bottom corner. These sort of games against Man City are those sort of goals are going to come from where we actually get them on a counter. So for me personally, I like to focus on how we respond after international breaks. And so far that's been good. The next major question is, now can we keep this up in the next game? Like you say, is Fulham, are we just going to drop off or are we going to keep going sort of thing? So obviously I'm not saying like, Man City, we're just going to win this game easy. It's Man City at the end of the day. Let's be real.
Yeah, you've got to be real about that.
At all. But I think there's definitely a lot of positives we can look forward to for this game. So
yeah, it's interesting because I remember obviously before that previous international break, I think we came back, forgive me, I think it was against Brentford. It might, or forgive me if it may have been somebody or West Ham. And there was that feeling that Ange was in need of a kind of big result. We had the previous international break not go so well. I mean, let's go to the eternal optimist, Jonny Aim over there. Jonny.
Well, listen, look. Let's go into positives. We're going into this.
John, can I just say one thing before you do say the positives? I've just realised I've got to say this. I've gone and said they've got withdrawals coming up. I've just seen Fabrizio Romano flash up and say Kevin De Bruyne, John Stones, Jack Grealish,
all back.
Manuel Akanji, all return to training. Sorry, everybody.
Wow, you just killed me.
Sorry, John.
That's
I knew that already. That's why, bro. I knew before Romano. That's why I said it.
I'll let Johnny come back in now. Go on, John.
Look, I said, they play the game, Marlon.
Sorry,
Georgie. They play the game, man. Right? They took them out of training. There's a bigger fish to fry, okay? And that is beating us. Listen, we go in there with great form, right? We are playing snakes and ladders football this season. We go up the ladder, we hit the snake, and we go all the way back down again. And that's what we do. But listen, look, on the positives, Montgomery's worked wonders on set pieces. We've only conceded two. One against two, one against Arsenal, and the other one against I can't remember.
Villa, I think. Was it Villa?
Villa. As George says, we've scored 7 counter-attack goals this season. 3 from Sonny, 3 from Johnson. I can't remember who scored the other one. But, we managed 3 in the whole of last season. So he is changing it up. I think the best ever season of fast counter-attack goals was 9 under Pochettino in 2019.
Yep.
But they say one man doesn't make it the team. Well, I'm sorry. Rodri is an exception to the rule. He is unbelievable. All those people questioning how he won the Ballon d'Or, right? Yeah. You've only got to look at Man City. It's like a gaping wound in that team. He's such an essential part of what Pep ball is all about. And they haven't had any answers, but I think you slot in KDB, Grealish, Foden, and the defenders, and I think they're a different team. I think, you look at someone like Stones when he went to Man City, came with a big price tag, but he really didn't perform. It took him a long while before he started to shine. And that's why I won't write someone off like Dragusin, because I think whilst he hasn't been very good, I think he reminds me more of a traditional centre forward, old school centre forward. If you watch him in, the European games for Romania, he has been very good for them. And he was surprisingly good, coupled with Ben Davies, amazingly in that game against Man City. I'm a realist, though. I'm a realist, and
here he comes.
I'm like Marlon. I want to win. Do I believe we can win? Of course we can. Anything's possible.
It's football.
But realistically, I want us to go into that game and put up a great performance.
Yes, that's really important.
And show that we are back, right? And put up, we can come away from the ground. Look, there are games. I don't mind losing. Obviously, I want to win every game, but I don't mind if I walk out that stadium, wherever it may be, and say, you know what, we gave our all.
We've left it on the pitch.
We left everything on the pitch, and we can't say that this season. But my main focus, like Marlon, is the Fulham game, because that is a game we cannot afford to lose. And if we do lose that, the heat in the kitchen is going to get extremely, extremely hot.
Listen, we've got our predictions. I just got that song. The heat is on. It's on the street. God, what else to say? Listen, thank God I'm not singing it. That's all I would just say. We've got our predictions. It's a big, big game. Look, I think you make the points there, guys. I think what we want to see more than anything is a performance. I think the key will be, shut this talk up about there being bust-ups and whatever behind the scenes. Go and show that everybody is certainly playing for the manager and go put a performance in, and then listen, the rest will take care of itself. I think City away in general was never easy. City without Rodri, I agree again on what Jonny said. He's a massive player for them, but they have got players that undoubtedly can hurt us. But I will remind you that Spurs went up there last season with a pairing of Emerson Royale, and I think was it Emerson? What was it? Ben Davis, both playing as fullbacks.
Davis.
Yeah, and we came away with a 3-3. And played ever so well. And to be fair, Andrew, I remember it was actually prior to that game. There was a lot of talk saying, yeah, but surely he's got to change his tactics. He's got to change it up. You know, I remember having Costa on here, bless him. Anthony Costa going, he's got to change it up. He can't be doing this week in, week out. And I say that was at a time, if you guys do remember, of course, that we have had that situation where I think it was before that, the Chelsea game, we lost a whole host of players. I mean, look, Spurs are, to some degree, in a situation where we're going to have an injury update from Ange, of course, on Friday. But they've got players that can no doubtly hurt Man City. And, of course, Kulusevski being one of them is always been a thorn in their side. I want to say again, guys, thank you so much. Before we let you go, let's get predictions to close. So sorry, they thought they got away with it there. George is smiling. Thought he got away with it. We'll go to George first. They'll never remember, George. What are you going for, bud?
Well, like you said, that I think we've got a good chance of scoring goals, but equally with Van der Ven and Co being out, we equally can concede as many. So I think similar to last year, I think we can come away with a draw, but I'm going to go for a 2-2.
2-2, okay.
Now I'll be happy with that. I'll take a draw away to City.
That will calm down. That will calm down some of the restless natives. It will. Let's go to Jonny next.
Oh, blimey.
You got to say, John, your face is like you've already been at the game and come back.
Because I'm traumatized like George. George, you go home and away, right? Yeah. So, but I've just been doing it for a lot longer than you. That's why this face is looking so distraught. Broken. For me, it very much depends on the team. I think if there's no KDB, and we got Romero's back, and we've got a pretty decent team out. I'm very confident that we could get a draw. But without him and KDB back, I would say I'm going to go for a 3-2 Man City win. Okay,
Jonny, thank you so much as always. I've got to say, George is back with us soon. Jonny is back with us very, very soon. I think we've got Jonny scheduled for coming back after Fulham. So it better bloody be a good result. I tell you, after Fulham, it better bloody be. God help us. Miles is smiling already. I'm worried what Miles thinks is coming on this show because he's smiling like that. I do worry. Thinking, God, what is coming here? Miles, Etihad, Decky what we going for, Miles? Let's bring you in. I can't bring him off mute, so he's have to come off mute unless he's stand on mute deliberately. Sorry, Miles. Let's bring you back in.
Look, I've listened to what everyone said. I can't see it. I think we'll put in a performance, though. I think we will put in a performance. I just think it's not going to go our way. I think we'll score early, funny enough. I think we'll score first, and then City will pile on the pressure. But it's 3-2 either way. It'll either be 3-2 to them or 3-2 to us. I can't see it. Yeah, you talked about last year, but there was a key man last year that everyone forgot about, and that was Lo Celso. He literally ran that midfield last year, and City couldn't cope. And that's my worry this year, that we don't have that sort of player. We've got Kulu, but Kulu's always hurting from the wings. So maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for Maddison. Maddison might be the man. He's had a couple of weeks.
On that point, Maddison needs a big game performance, doesn't he? Really, he needs a big game performance. Wouldn't it be great if this is the one, Miles?
This is the one. Yeah, this could be the one. But yeah, look, I'll be cheering on Spurs no matter how much. No matter what I think in my head, I'll be cheering on Spurs at the weekend, and I'll be more than happy to be wrong. I'll be more than happy to people to calling me a clown and whatnot, because I don't care. When we win, I don't care. I want to win, but it's just I just can't see it. It's the 4 games that City have lost that worries me. It's the reason why I don't think they'll go for number 5. So a draw is probably the best, but I reckon it'll be 3-2 either way. But I think we'll put in performance. That's the one thing. I think if we put in a performance and lost 3-2, I'm all good. I think I'm with Jonny on that. Yeah.
Hey, Marlon, I just want to ask, guys. I have a question. What minute does James Maddison come onto the pitch?
85th.
89.
It's not.
85 to 87.
You're not sure he starts, do you? Really? You just don't know.
We should do a higher or lower to see what.
The one player I really would love to get minutes. And I think it's important he gets minutes. We haven't got time to cover it now. For me, is Archie Gray. Is this now the moment that we will finally see Archie Gray not start? I'm not asking him for it to start, but when Basuma or Papa get tired, we see this kid play in the position he was born to play in.
I hope he has to, right? Surely, because without Bentancur, without anyone
you
else,
would
really.
think so,
But
this
you know what's
is Ange Postecoglou we're talking about. So
yeah,
I don't
but
know.
what's concerning is that he played for the under-21s at right back too. So what is his future really going to be? And I think that's the question at the moment that needs to be asked, because if he's playing for England under-21s at right back,
he's a young James
Marlon, anyone who's watching this show now, right? If you get a minute, go back, look on YouTube, and watch Chelsea versus Leeds last season in the cup.
He ran the game. He was superb.
And look at an Archie Gray, a much younger, a year younger Archie Gray, playing in the middle of the park, having played right back all season as a make weight. He came onto that pitch and he bossed it and was man of the match. He was unbelievable. And I believe it's in his locker. That's me personally.
Listen, I think, Jonny, on this point, he will most certainly be getting game time now. He has to be, because naturally, I mean, as George touched on there, with no, of course, Bentancur, apart from the Europa League games, of course. I mean, I don't see a better opportunity to bed him in, or serious questions will be asked about what was the purpose in buying him. I mean, you've got to ask that question. 100%. So we will see. Look, there you go, guys. It's the start of, 17 games to come on Last Word on Spurs. We will try it, unlike the players, and be ready for the full 90 and see you through right to the very, very end. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful George Achillea. I've got double George this week. I am blessed, George. Thank you so much, my man. I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Top man.
Yes,
tomorrow. Shout about. We'll see what tomorrow brings. We'll see what tomorrow brings. We'll leave it like that. George, thank you so much. Marlon Spurs Kings, Miles, thank you so much. We'll be seeing you very, very soon back on our screens. We will. And Jonny, thank you so much, mate. My pleasure. Twice in 2 weeks. God, I'm fans of all the wives at the moment here. God, I'm putting up a hit list, I think, by the time I'm finished. I will have to.
And Ricky, just to say to you, good luck in the awards tomorrow, man. Because if anyone deserves to win,
will we see Tottenham bring home a trophy in the Spurs Stadium? Let's.
John, we can't do it. God, we might as well all give up. We can't. I tell you. Listen, guys, I want to say a massive thank you. Nearly over 3,500 of you watched us live, guys. As always, thank you so much for all your support from the show. Look. From the superb George Achillea, from the brilliant Miles at the Spurs Kings, from the wonderful Jonny H. Hamme. He tells it as it is. We've been the Last Word on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well. We're off to the deck he had. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Right, Spurs.